You ever think you've hit rock bottom until someone hands you a shovel? That was me, sitting on the floor outside my own sister's wedding, wearing a dress my mother said was appropriate for someone of my status. I wasn't invited inside. Not because I'd done anything wrong, no, because I married a man who worked with his hands, not a man who wore a suit. My sister was marrying Mr. Corporate Perfection, and apparently I was the shame of the family, but they didn't know the truth about my husband, and when he walked in, everything changed. Stay with us. This amazing story will leave you speechless. Before we get started, hit like, share, and subscribe, and drop your location in the comments. My family had always treated my sister, Lily, like she was the sun the rest of us were supposed to orbit around. If she sneezed, my mother ran for tissues. If she sighed, my father asked what they could buy to fix it. And when she announced she was marrying Ryan, the great corporate golden boy with the tailored suits, glossy smile, and LinkedIn charisma, my parents acted like she had just secured peace on earth. Meanwhile, I was the daughter who married the farmer. At least, that's how they said it, like the word tasted sour. I still remember the night both announcements were made. Lily had strutted into the living room, flashing her diamond ring like it could signal satellites. My parents gasped, shrieked, hugged her, danced around like teenagers at a boy band concert. I congratulated her too, but the moment I spoke, she glanced at me like I was interrupting an important broadcast. Then came my turn. "I'm getting married too," I said softly. "Jacob proposed." Silence. Not the warm, happy kind. The kind that sucks all the air out of a room. My mother forced a smile so tight it looked painful. "Oh, that's nice, dear. A farmer, right?" My father added, "Well, stability is important, I suppose." But I heard the truth underneath. Lily brought home a man with a corporate ladder already under his feet. I brought home a man with dirt under his nails. And in their minds, those things weren't equal. From that point forward, everything became a comparison. Rings, lifestyles, futures. Lily was the success story, while I was gently but constantly nudged into the role of the disappointment. They tried to hide it, but their voices, their actions, their sighs said everything. Little did they know, they'd misjudged the wrong daughter and the wrong man. Jacob never fit into the polished little box my family expected a good husband to come in. He didn't wear button-down shirts or loafers. He didn't pretend to enjoy overpriced brunches or sip wine while discussing quarterly earnings. Jacob was a man who woke up before the sun, whose hands were rough from real work, and whose smile came easier than any corporate guy my parents worshipped. But to my family, all they ever saw was the farmer. A label they use like an insult. The first time I brought Jacob home, he'd walked in carrying a basket of fresh produce from his land, bright tomatoes, sweet corn, herbs that smelled like summer. He offered them to my mother with that warm, respectful smile of his. She took the basket like it was a bag of old laundry someone accidentally handed her. "Oh, vegetables," she said flatly. "How thoughtful?" Jacob didn't even flinch. He just nodded politely and asked if she needed help carrying anything to the kitchen. My father barely looked up from his tablet. Lily, meanwhile, scanned Jacob from his boots upward, and I watched her eyebrows rise just a bit, like she was mentally calculating how many social points she'd lose standing next to him. "Interesting choice," she whispered to me later, as if I'd brought home a stray dog instead of the man I loved. But here's what none of them cared to see. Jacob was brilliant. He managed hundreds of acres with precision, understanding soil health, crop cycles, market fluctuations, and agricultural tech better than most executives understood their own departments. He employed local workers, supported small businesses, and ran a successful distribution network that reached 3 counties. But none of that mattered to my family. In their world, success came wrapped in a suit and tie. Anything else was lesser. They saw Jacob's boots and assumed he was beneath them. They saw the dirt on his hands and never realized it came from building something real. And as their disrespect grew sharper, so did Jacob's quiet determination to never let them make me feel small, even when they tried their hardest. They didn't know it yet, but the man they dismissed would one day walk into that wedding and shatter every illusion they'd ever had. The wedding invitation arrived in a thick white envelope sealed with gold foil, Lily's signature brand of "Look how elegant I am." My mother handed it to me during Sunday dinner, smiling in that tight, overly rehearsed way that always made me suspicious. "You and Jacob are invited," she said, but her tone lingered oddly on the word "you," as if the second name was optional. I opened the envelope slowly, reading the scripted fonts and decorative flourishes. It looked like something pulled straight from a bridal magazine. But tucked inside was a smaller handwritten note from Lily. "Hey sis, just a heads up. Since it's a formal event, maybe Jacob should sit this one out. Wouldn't want him to feel out of place. You understand, right? Love you?" My stomach dropped. Out of place? Or did she mean he doesn't fit the image I'm trying to project? I folded the note quietly and slipped it back into the envelope. My mother was watching my reaction closely, her eyes flicking with that familiar judgment. "It's better this way," she said. "You know how Jacob is. Weddings like these, well, they have a certain standard." A certain standard. There it was again, the invisible line they'd drawn between my life and Lily's. "I'm not going without him," I said firmly. My father sighed, the kind of sigh he used when taxes were due or the car needed repairs. "Sweetheart, think about Lily's big day. She's worked so hard for this moment. We don't want any distractions." "Distractions?" I repeated. "Jacob is my husband." But they had already mentally erased him from the guest list. Over the next few days, messages trickled in from relatives. Maybe it's for the best. Weddings are stressful enough. Jacob might feel uncomfortable among professionals. Professionals. As if running a thriving agricultural operation didn't count. Jacob noticed my quiet mood immediately. When I finally told him, he didn't get angry, just hurt. And that hurt settled into me deeper than anything Lily had written. That was the moment I realized my family wasn't just ashamed of him, they were ashamed of us. And the wedding was only going to make that clearer. The wedding venue looked like it had been pulled straight out of a luxury lifestyle magazine. White stone pillars, cascading floral arrangements, and a fountain with rose petals floating on the surface. Guests were already milling around in glittering gowns and sharp suits, laughing as if their lives were curated for social media. I stepped out of the car alone, holding the small clutch I'd debated bringing for nearly an hour. Jacob had wanted to come, despite the suggestion not to, but I insisted he stay home. I didn't want him walking into a place where he'd be treated like an inconvenience. Still, as I watched the couples arriving arm in arm, a pang of loneliness settled in my chest. My mother spotted me before I even reached the entrance. She hurried over, adjusting her pearl necklace like my presence somehow made it crooked. "Oh dear," she said, looking me up and down. "That's the dress you chose? For Lily's wedding?" I swallowed. "Yes. Is something wrong with it?" "It's simple," she replied, which in her dictionary meant disappointing. "But it'll have to do. Just try not to draw attention away from Lily." As if I ever could. Inside the lobby, everything shimmered, from the crystal chandeliers to the towering wedding arch covered in imported orchids. I took in the sight slowly, wanting to feel something other than the smallness creeping in. That's when I heard the first snicker. Lily's bridesmaids, 3 women who always walked like the world owed them applause, were whispering loudly enough to make sure I heard. Did she seriously come alone? Probably couldn't convince Farmer Boy to leave his tractor. Maybe he's embarrassed to be seen here. Heat rose to my cheeks, but I kept walking, pretending I didn't notice. Their laughter followed me like an unwanted spotlight. Then came the real blow. Ryan's mother approached me, her posture stiff, her smile colder than the marble floors. "Hello, Lily's sister, right?" "Yes," I said. She nodded, lips pursing. I wasn't sure. Lily always describes you as the quieter one, the more modest one, the one with simpler circumstances. Simpler circumstances, another elegant way of saying beneath us. I forced a polite smile, but something inside me cracked just slightly. And as I made my way toward the ceremony hall, desperately trying to blend in, I had no idea the worst humiliation was still waiting, just past the double doors. As I approached the grand double doors of the ceremony hall, a young usher stepped in front of me with a nervous smile, holding a clipboard like it was a shield. Excuse me. Are you the bride's sister? I nodded, relieved someone finally recognized me without an insult attached. His smile faltered. Right, so your seat isn't inside the hall. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. I'm sorry. What? He shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting anywhere but my face. Your mother said you'd prefer something quieter, so she arranged a seat just outside the hall for your comfort. Comfort? The word punched harder than the truth ever could. I prefer to sit outside, I repeated slowly, disbelief tightening my voice. Since when? He didn't answer, just pointed to a lonely white folding chair positioned near the wall, several feet from the door. It looked like it had been dragged from storage at the last minute. Everyone else had velvet cushions and gold-trimmed seating cards. I had this. Guests passed by, their perfume lingering like reminders of the world I wasn't allowed to step into. As each person walked through the doors, I glimpsed chandeliers glowing warmly inside, soft music playing, people settling into rows of elegant chairs, with my sister radiant at the end of the aisle, and I was sitting on a folding chair in the hallway. My mother approached me briefly, smoothing her dress unnecessarily as she spoke. Please don't make a fuss. Seating is limited, and with you coming alone, it just didn't make sense to... To what? I asked quietly. Give me dignity? She froze, then sighed in that frustrated way she reserved only for me. Don't be dramatic. Lily doesn't need distractions today. There it was again. Distraction. As if my existence was a smudge on their perfect picture. I sat down slowly, the metal chair creaking under me. People glanced my way, whispering behind manicured hands. I kept my eyes forward, blinking hard to keep the tears from spilling. Little did they know, they weren't just pushing me aside. They were lighting a fuse that Jacob would soon walk in and ignite into a fire none of them would ever forget. Sitting outside the ceremony hall felt like being trapped between two worlds. One I wasn't allowed into, and one I didn't belong to. The music inside grew louder as guests settled, the soft hum of violins drifting through the doorway like a taunt. I kept my gaze low, fingers twisting the edge of my clutch. Every few seconds, someone passed by, giving me a puzzled glance, like I'd wandered into the wrong wedding. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, to pretend this didn't sting as deeply as it did. But then the door cracked open, and Ryan, the groom, stepped out with two of his groomsmen trailing behind him. They were laughing, the loud, performative kind of laughter men use when trying to impress each other. When Ryan spotted me sitting alone, something in his expression flickered, something smug. Oh, he said, slowing to a stop. They really have you sitting out here. One of the groomsmen snorted. Perfect spot for her, isn't it? I clenched my jaw but said nothing. Ryan adjusted his cufflinks, then leaned closer as if offering confidential advice. You know, Lily didn't want you feeling out of place among the guests, he said. We all know your life is a little different. Different. There was that word again. Always dipped in superiority. I swallowed hard. I'm here to support my sister, that's all. Ryan laughed under his breath. Right, sure. Look, it's not personal. Some people just don't fit the aesthetic. Nothing wrong with that. His eyes drifted deliberately to the dirt on my shoes from walking through the gravel lot. We can't have dirt mixing in with gold. The groomsman laughed, loudly, cruelly. Heat rushed to my face. Not embarrassment. anger. A slow, quiet burn that settled behind my ribs. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Ryan raised a hand dismissively. "Relax," he said. "It's a classy event. Try not to stand out." Then he walked back into the hall, leaving me sitting there like a discarded piece of furniture. The door shut behind him, muffling the laughter inside. For the first time that afternoon, I lowered my head, not because I was ashamed of myself, but because I finally understood the depth of their disdain. And what none of them knew was this: Jacob had never made me feel small. Not once, not ever. But today they had pushed me so low that the only direction left for me to rise was straight through them. As I sat on that cold folding chair outside the wedding hall, Ryan's words echoing in my ears, my mind drifted back to the first day I met Jacob. It was almost ridiculous how vivid it felt, like life was reminding me who I really was and why none of their cruelty could redefine me. It was late spring, the kind of day where the air smells like fresh rain and possibility. My car had broken down on a rural road, steam rising from the hood like it was throwing a tantrum. I stood there, frustrated, waving at passing cars that pretended I was invisible. Then Jacob pulled over. He stepped out of his old truck with a gentle smile, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Looks like she's overheated," he said, not judging, not smirking, just genuinely wanting to help. In 20 minutes, he had my car running again. When I tried to hand him money, he shook his head. "Keep it," he said. "Just promise me you'll get a proper mechanic to look at it. And maybe don't drive it like it's indestructible." His eyes crinkled when he smiled, warm, kind, real. From that moment on, our lives intertwined effortlessly. Jacob didn't bring me flowers. He brought me seedlings, little green promises for the garden he helped me build. He didn't take me to fancy restaurants. He cooked for me with ingredients he'd grown himself. He listened, truly listened, without the need to compete or belittle. With him, I felt seen, not compared, not measured, just loved. The family may have mocked his boots and his dirt-stained hands, but those hands had lifted me through every hardship, held me through every fear. Remembering that steadied me. If they thought they'd broken me today, they were wrong. Jacob was worth more than their entire guest list combined, and soon they would learn exactly why. I hadn't planned on telling Jacob anything. I didn't want him worrying, and I definitely didn't want him driving all the way to the venue just to see how low my family had placed me, literally. But sitting there outside the ceremony hall, watching guests glide past me in designer outfits while pretending not to stare, my chest felt tighter with every passing minute. So I pulled out my phone and typed a simple message. "I'm here. Everything's fine. Ceremony is starting." I hesitated. Then deleted, "Everything's fine." That part wasn't true, not even close. Instead, I sent, "I'm seated outside the hall. Don't worry, I'll explain later." The moment I pressed send, my screen lit up with an immediate incoming call. Jacob. I panicked and declined it. I wasn't ready to hear the concern, or worse, the anger I knew would fill his voice. A second later, a text came through. "Why are you outside?" Another message. "Did they not give you a seat?" Then, "Did someone say something to you?" My fingers trembled as I typed. "Please, stay home. It's Lily's day. Let's not make anything bigger." There was a long pause, long enough for me to think maybe he'd accepted it, but then 3 dots appeared. Stopped, started again, stopped. Finally, one message appeared. "I'm coming." My heart slammed in my chest. I typed back fast, "No, please don't. It'll make things worse." Another pause. "Worse for who?" he responded. I stared at the screen, unable to answer. Because the truth was ugly. Worse for me. The fallout would land on me, not him. My family would blame me for disrupting the wedding, for provoking drama. I didn't want that. I didn't want Jacob to walk into a room full of people who had already decided he wasn't worthy of breathing their air. But Jacob wasn't the kind of man who let the people he loved sit alone, especially in humiliation. A final message came through. I'm already on my way. My breath caught. They had spent the entire day making sure he stayed away. They were about to learn that Jacob never abandoned his wife, especially not when she needed him most. The ceremony was minutes from starting. The violins had shifted into a soft prelude. Guests were settling into their velvet chairs, and Lily stood near the arch posing for last-minute photos, glowing with the confidence of someone who believed the day was hers alone. I sat outside the hall, heart pounding unevenly, eyes flicking between the closed doors and my phone screen. Jacob hadn't texted again. That scared me more than anything, because when Jacob went quiet, it meant he was already moving. I tried to distract myself, pretending to admire the floral arrangements lining the corridor, but the knot in my stomach tightened when I heard the distant rumble of a familiar engine. Not loud, not disruptive, just unmistakably his. My breath froze. No, not now, I whispered to myself. A moment later, the main entrance doors swung open. Jacob stepped inside. He wasn't dressed in his usual work clothes, but he wasn't trying to impress anyone either. He wore a clean charcoal button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows, dark jeans, and his well-worn boots. His hair was still damp from a rushed shower, and there was determination in his stride that made the bustling reception area fall still. Every conversation in the lobby died mid-sentence. People turned, eyes widened, not because he looked out of place, but because he didn't look intimidated. He looked like a man who belonged anywhere he decided to stand. My mother reached him first, stiffening as she blocked his path. "Jacob, what are you doing here?" He didn't raise his voice, didn't scowl, didn't even pause. "I'm here for my wife," he said simply. The words slipped through the space like a quiet earthquake. Ryan's mother, standing nearby, clicked her tongue. "This is a formal event. You weren't invited." Jacob looked at her with a calm so steady it became unsettling. And yet, here I am. He walked past her before she could speak again. The doors to the ceremony hall were cracked open, giving everyone inside a partial view of the commotion. Heads turned. Whispering spread like wildfire. "Is that the farmer? Why is he here? He wasn't on the guest list." Then Lily appeared, annoyed that anything was pulling attention from her. "What is going on out here?" she snapped, until she saw him. Even she went silent. Jacob's gaze found me instantly, sitting on that lonely folding chair like some forgotten guest. His jaw tightened, not with anger at me, but at the sight of what they'd done. He walked straight toward me, boots echoing on the polished floor, each step louder than the music inside. And in that moment, everyone, all the guests, all the critics, all the people who thought they knew his worth, felt the shift. The room no longer belonged to Lily. It belonged to the man they thought would never dare walk through those doors. Jacob stopped right in front of me, his shadow falling over the cheap folding chair they'd assigned me. The whole hallway felt suspended, like even the air didn't dare move. He crouched down, leveling his eyes with mine, gentle, steady, and full of the kind of love no one in that building had ever bothered to understand. "Stand up," he whispered softly. "You don't belong on the floor." My throat tightened. "Jacob, you shouldn't have come." He glanced around at the lavish hall, the decorated archway, the perfectly dressed guests who were staring at him like he was an intruder. "Yeah," he said calmly, "I see that." Lily, furious at losing center stage, marched toward us. "Why is he here?" she hissed. "I told you not to bring—" "Watch your tone," Jacob said without even looking at her. It wasn't rude. It was controlled, unshakable. His voice carried the weight of a man who didn't need to shout to command a room. Ryan joined her, puffing up his chest like a threatened rooster. "This is a private ceremony," he snapped. "We have standards here. You can't just walk in. Who do you think you are?" Jacob finally stood, turning to face him fully. And that's when everything changed. "Who am I?" Jacob repeated calmly. "I'm the owner of Hartwell Agriculture. the supplier for Harvest Co., Gold Ridge Markets, and he paused just long enough for impact. The entire culinary division of Orion Resorts. A ripple of gasps moved through the crowd like a wave. Ryan's face drained of color. His father's company, one he bragged about endlessly, worked directly with Orion Resorts. Their supply contracts were notoriously strict. Jacob continued, I manage over 600 acres of productive land. I employ 47 workers. I run distribution deals that your company, he nodded at Ryan, relies on more than you realize. Silence. Utter, devastating silence. Jacob stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Ryan, Lily, and my parents could hear. And yet, you sat my wife outside, on the floor. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father staggered back like someone had hit him. Jacob didn't yell. He didn't boast. He simply stated facts that shattered every assumption in the room. Next time, he finished, you should think twice before judging someone by the dirt on their boots. The hall remained frozen, because in a single moment the man they thought was beneath them had revealed he'd been standing above their arrogance all along. Ryan tried to recover, straightening his suit jacket as if fabric alone could restore his dignity. His forced smile twitched at the corners, cracking under the weight of everyone staring. Look, he said, voice wobbling, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is my wedding. You can't just barge in and start making accusations. Jacob took one slow step toward him, not threatening, just steady, controlled, certain. I didn't barge in, Jacob said. I walked in because my wife was humiliated, and you, he pointed to the empty folding chair beside mine, allowed it. Ryan scoffed loudly, desperate for support. Your wife was seated outside because she came alone. We didn't have space inside for extra complications. Complications? Jacob repeated, raising an eyebrow. She's the bride's sister. Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Lily tugged at his arm, whispering urgently, just ignore him. He's trying to ruin our day. Jacob didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Ryan, unblinking. You know, Jacob continued, voice low but carrying through the hall, it's interesting. Men like you like to pretend you're powerful, but real power doesn't need spotlights, or fancy chairs, or people to clap every time you breathe. Someone near the doorway gasped quietly. Ryan's jaw clenched. I don't have to prove myself to you, Ryan snapped. This is my wedding, and you're just what? Jacob asked softly. A farmer? He tilted his head. Funny, because last month your father's company submitted a proposal to Orion Resorts. They rejected it. Do you know why? Ryan blinked fast, visibly thrown. What does that have to do with anything? Jacob closed the distance between them, stopping only a foot away. Because the supplier Orion prefers, the one they trust to meet safety standards, reliability requirements, and ethical sourcing policies. He held Ryan's stare. Is me. A quiet gasp rippled through the guests. Ryan's face flushed red, then pale, then an uncomfortable shade in between. Jacob didn't smirk, didn't gloat. He simply said, You humiliated my wife. Now you've humiliated yourself. And for the first time that day, Ryan had nothing left to say. My parents had been standing off to the side, stiff as the floral centerpieces, watching the confrontation unfold like it was a scene they couldn't look away from. When Jacob mentioned Orion Resorts, I saw it, the moment their expressions cracked. My mother's perfectly painted smile dissolved, and my father's proud posture slumped, as if someone had pulled the rug right out from under him. Lily noticed it too. Mom? Dad? Why do you look like that? She whispered. Before they could answer, Jacob continued, his tone still calm, still devastatingly controlled. You know, he said, glancing briefly at my parents, before coming here, I received an email from Orion's procurement board. They're looking to expand contracts next quarter. They ask me if I could recommend any companies worth partnering with." Ryan froze. My parents froze harder, because my father's small consulting firm had been desperately trying to get a foot in that exact door for years. Jacob took a breath. "Funny timing, isn't it?" My mother swallowed hard, panic flickering across her face. "Jacob, surely you're not implying—" "I'm not implying anything," he said, shaking his head. "I'm stating the reality. Your treatment of my wife today tells me everything I need to know about how you view people." His gaze shifted to Ryan, and Orion's board values integrity, respect, accountability, things that seem in short supply here. My father stepped forward, voice cracking just slightly. "Jacob, son, let's not make rash assumptions. We didn't intend—" Jacob cut him off gently. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here for my wife." Lily's lips trembled as she whispered sharply to Ryan, "Do something. Fix this." Ryan looked like he wanted to vanish. His future, his connections, everything he had bragged about suddenly felt fragile, like glass under Jacob's boot. My mother reached out toward me timidly. "Honey, if we had known—" "You did know," Jacob said quietly. "You just didn't care." Silence swallowed the hallway. My parents stared at him in horror, realizing, in one breathtaking, humiliating moment, that the man they dismissed as insignificant held more influence than any of them ever knew, and that their arrogance had just cost them dearly. For a moment, the hallway was frozen, everyone stunned, everyone silent. Then, like a fuse finally hitting the flame, Lily exploded. "This is unbelievable," she shrieked, her voice cracking through the air like shattered glass. "You're ruining everything. This is my wedding, not some business meeting." Guests flinched. A few stepped back. The flawless bride mask she had worn all morning was crumbling, piece by piece, revealing the panic underneath. She spun toward me first, eyes blazing. "You couldn't just sit quietly, could you? You had to make everything about you." I stood there, speechless, because I hadn't made anything about me. I had literally been placed outside the room like unwanted luggage. Before I could respond, Lily rounded on Jacob, jabbing a finger at his chest. "And you," she hissed, "you show up uninvited and start threatening people? Who do you think you are?" Jacob didn't flinch. "I didn't threaten anyone," he said calmly. "I stated facts. Your decisions created the consequences." "Don't talk in riddles," Lily shouted, voice shaking with rage. Just leave, both of you. You're embarrassing me." Ryan tugged her arm, trying to shush her. "Lily, stop. People are staring." That was the wrong thing to say. She snapped her arm away. "Let them stare," she yelled. "Do you think I care? My whole day is falling apart because of them." Her eyes were wild. Humiliation, panic, and fury mixing into something messy and loud. The picture-perfect bride had vanished. In her place stood a woman whose carefully curated world was cracking open. My mother rushed to calm her, whispering frantically, "Lily, sweetheart, lower your voice." "No!" Lily screamed. "Jacob has ruined our connections. He ruined our future, and she pointed at me with trembling rage. "She let him!" Her words sliced through the air. But what she didn't realize, what no one realized yet, was that the only thing ruining their future was the way they had treated me all along. While Lily continued unraveling, Jacob turned away from the noise and focused solely on me. The fury swirling around us, accusations, whispers, gasps, seemed to fade when his eyes met mine. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked heartbroken for me. He reached out his hand. "Come here," he said gently. I hesitated, glancing at the folding chair that had become a symbol of everything they thought I deserved. Before I could rise on my own, Jacob bent down, without caring who watched, and lifted me to my feet with both hands steady and certain. It wasn't dramatic or showy. It was quiet, intimate, powerful. It was the kind of gesture that said, "You are not less." Not to me. Never to me. As I stood beside him, my shoulders finally straightened. For the first time that day, I wasn't trying to shrink myself. I wasn't apologizing for my presence. I wasn't wishing to disappear. Jacob wrapped an arm around me, not claiming me, but protecting me from the storm around us. His thumb brushed my shoulder gently, grounding me in a way no gold-trimmed chair ever could. The guests noticed the shift. Whispers softened. Stares changed. Some people even looked ashamed, because they could all see it clearly now. Whatever they thought, Jacob lacked. He outweighed every man in that room in strength, dignity, and integrity. And as he guided me away from that chair, away from the humiliation, they realized something else. The woman they had pushed aside was walking away with the only person there who truly valued her. We walked out of the venue together, not rushed, not ashamed, but steady. Behind us, Lily's meltdown spiraled louder. Ryan tried to salvage his dignity, and my parents scrambled to hold together the crumbling illusion of perfection they'd spent years constructing. But Jacob didn't look back. And for the first time that day, neither did I. By the time we reached the parking lot, my phone buzzed with frantic messages from relatives, from my parents, from Lily herself. Every notification was a new mixture of blame, excuses, or desperate pleas. I silenced my phone and slipped it into Jacob's hand. "I'm done," I whispered. He nodded. "Good. They don't deserve your pain." What I didn't expect was how fast everything unraveled for them. Within a week, Ryan's corporate deal collapsed. His company lost the Orion Resorts partnership entirely after a routine audit flagged his team's lack of professionalism. Rumors spread, some true, some exaggerated, but all pointing back to that wedding day. Within 2 months, Lily's marriage was dissolved. The arguments that started in whispers behind closed doors became shouting matches, ending in a quiet meeting with lawyers and a very expensive divorce. And my parents? Their consulting dreams dried up. Doors they once assumed would open for them suddenly remained sealed. Respect they thought they commanded faded overnight. Meanwhile, Jacob received an invitation, personally delivered, to join Orion's Executive Agricultural Council. He accepted only after confirming one detail: they valued integrity over image. Our life grew fuller, calmer, and more beautiful. I found work that made me proud, and Jacob's business expanded further than either of us dreamed. Sometimes I think back to that folding chair, the symbol of everything they believed about me. Now I smile, because the wedding they tried to use to humiliate me became the day I learned just how powerful it is to walk away with the right person at my side.